Is there a reason why I only see your picture here and I don't see you?
Yeah, because like I said, I was gonna roll out of bed. I'm not gonna turn my video on, and I'm just doing this thing. It looked like I just rolled out of bed.
Steven?
Yes.
How do I feel about that?
I feel all right. You need to see me. Fair enough. So what I'm gonna do is this. I don't think I'll ever do this in video form, but I'll put on a hoodie. I'll turn a light on. I'm gonna do this thing. You son of a bitch. All right, let's do this.
Steven, I'm a good daddy. And you shouldn't have a response for that. Actually, there's no need to respond.
Right. That's just you hope it goes away. You're just like
I've moved on. I've moved on.
All right, good. So, with that in mind, we're recording. We're fucking doing this, but we're gonna do this a bit more professionally than we've done in the past. I do want to have a bit of a boilerplate thing at the beginning of the podcast. So,
let me tell you something, Steven. We are fucking professionals every goddamn fucking time. Let's go.
Sounds good. All right, let me turn on voice recorder so we have backup. And we're rolling.
I can't take it.
We'll take it. You'll take it. You'll like it. All right.
You make my day. You make my day in so many ways. Also, at some point this week, I want to sit down and talk with you. Business side of things, not positive identity. Here's the thing. This is going to, with positive identity, with my stand-up and everything like that, I'm realizing that I have too much on my plate to do all of this right. You know what I'm saying? And so it's the other part of the business me that has to go. The Greenbush apparel stuff, all that.
Yeah, you're talking about that in December, yeah.
Yeah. And so as one of my most trusted advisors, I would seriously like to sit down and just have a conversation with you about my ideas, how I'm going to move forward personally, and the expectations and the you know what I'm saying? Just
100%. Like I'll talk to you as like a producer, as someone who works in the industry, working with you in positive identity. Because like I know what you're trying to say. And this is conversations that I have with a lot of filmmakers. How is this idea going to work? Business wise, what makes sense here? Do I know the right people to be able to at least put these things together so it gets to the people? An idea is great, but like you have to be able to get it to somebody.
It's not. So, it's like, not even. It's that. It's that. But it's the life choice. Perspective from the life choice perspective, and the best way to achieve the goal. You know what I'm saying? The range of operation. Okay. The tactical plan.
I do this stuff all the time, and so I'll definitely have a lot of opinions on this. So I would say for us,
I know you do. Yeah, you're perfect. You're my boy. You're Steven. For such I'm in the process of monumental decision making, and I want to be ready when. As we start reaching 100 million to 125, 150 million vaccinations in this country, things are going to start opening up pretty quickly.
And it's going to happen fast. It's going to happen faster than people realize.
Faster than people realize. And with everything that I'm doing with you, I look at this as 1/3 of the stool. You know what I'm saying? One of the legs of the stool. You know what I'm saying? Of what I'm doing. And and again, you're one of my most trusted friends. So I would love to just bounce some ideas off of you and hear your perspective on what it is I'm doing, what I'm doing wrong, and what I'm doing right. You know what I'm saying? So I can make sure that I maximize my efforts over the next few months, as well as achieve the goals that I have set forth for myself by the end of this calendar year.
I want to say something real quick. I want to jump into the podcast, but in many ways, to me, Rodney Dangerfield, how his arc went with his life, his age, and stuff like that, to me, that's what I'm kind of seeing from you. I'm seeing a bit of you've lived a life, and now your comedy is based off that life. All these other comedians, they haven't lived a life. They're 30, they're 25 or whatever. Sure, they're great in TikTok, stuff like that, whatever. But a huge part of our generation is going to look to people who, we don't know what's real or not. Oh, someone who's lived a life.
Right.
He knows what's real or not because they lived it. And so, I think for you, to me, that is a comp of what is the Black, gay, from Philadelphia version Rodney Dangerfield. Because I think to a certain degree, your stand-up will be informed by what you think your weaknesses are actually your strengths. And so I say that's the thing that wants to target for you and sort of build up in that. So I consider that right there.
Okay, perfect. No, I get you. Yeah, we'll set up some time to talk through the week.
All right, cool. Great. All right, so get this thing out of the way. All right. So
yes,
I don't know the angle of this right now. I have an angle in my head of Martin Luther King would not want us to see in color. So when I started to go in this intro thing, that's kind of sort of my direction. It was going to happen is I'm going to have my thesis, you'll have your thesis, and we'll go from there. So
yeah, sounds good.
3. Hi, I'm Stephen Gray with the Positive Identity podcast series where we celebrate positive race relations and identity, and I'm with Ron Bush. Ron, it's the day before Martin Luther King Day. How you doing, buddy?
Yes, I am doing fantastic. Thank you very much. And for those of you, including you, Stephen, who don't know, tomorrow is my dad's birthday as well. He passed about 9 years ago, but yeah, tomorrow's my dad's birthday as well. It's always been a memorable day.
I want to get to that in a second. That's a huge thing because obviously a lot of us deeply love our parents, and the idea that our parents aren't going to be with us forever is a real sort of shaky thing. So let's put a mental note. I actually want to talk to you about, what that is and what life's like and your father. I want to have a special podcast.
Yeah, well, it's important. The reason I mentioned that too, Stephen, is because you have to remember my father is from Aiken, South Carolina. He was born and raised in the Jim Crow South. And since we are talking about Martin Luther King Day, we're talking about the great Martin Luther King today. I have a few perspectives that I would love to share.
All right, good. We'll work that in. So we'll definitely have that as part of this. For people who are hearing this podcast for the first time, Ron and I are trying to create positive race relations. In a society that is divided in many different ways, we would ask ourselves, are we part of the thing bringing people together? Are we the part that brings people apart? We choose to be together. We choose to be the ones that help to unify. And a big part of that is getting into understanding people, why we're doing the whole 9 yards. So that's our podcast for anyone who's a first-time viewer or listener. So today we're going to be talking about Martin Luther King and what does he mean in 2021 America? What does he write about? What is he wrong about? Is his mythic figure status still warranted? Ron, I have my opinions. We put out an article about Martin Luther King would want us to see in color. But I want you to sort of jump in first, and I'll talk about sort of the article that Positive Identity put out in a second.
Okay, sure. Does he deserve the status that he has? Absolutely.
Sure. Americans agree. Right.
Was he a perfect man? No. There's this new biopic that's coming out on him that kind of delves into that. I don't think no man is perfect, right?
No.
And but the courage and the principles and the values and the consistency and the wisdom and the truth and so much more, the unification, so much more that he brought to bear to this country, and therefore to the planet, has left an indelible mark. I would suggest that he's becoming more of a Jesus type of a figure than an actual man in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. You see these people, politicians and such, getting up there and they're selling all this lip service about what Martin Luther King meant to them. It's like, you're not doing anything that the man talked about. Why he was being tracked by the FBI, and his stance on the Vietnam War, and all of these things are rarely discussed. And similar, to Jesus. If Jesus was to come back today and became this powerful figure talking about straight up full on global socialism, basically, I mean, could you imagine?
People don't realize this, that MLK, when he died, 75% of this country disapproved of him. He had a disapproval rate of 75% in this country when he died. And I want to talk about that because, like, you talk about what's the man and what society made from the man, the mythical figure you talk about. And that's really important because in 2021 America, there's a real question about what actually his vision was, what he saw versus what society thinks and wants to believe he saw. And the biggest thing that MLK had that people sort of like keep banging in our heads, he wanted this colorblind society. There's that sort of famous quote, I dream of a world where, young children and people aren't judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And you hear that quote, it's ubiquitous. Everyone hears that quote at one point or the other. And what I started to realize is that quote, like a religious verse, needs to be seen in a larger context. It's something that you just hear, once. You're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Be colorblind. But Martin Luther King was not colorblind. And I'm actually curious, Ron. You obviously steeped in understanding of Dr. King. What was your perception? Because for me, white American, that was a perception that was given to us. We can't see
First of all,
color, right?
First of all, let me clearly state I am nowhere a MLK historian or authoritarian figure in any state. But I will say this. However, I do have opinions. I would say that a perception of a colorblind America would be one where systemic issues do not exist. When a black man doesn't get on an elevator and a white woman doesn't clutch her purse, or a white woman doesn't tackle a black teenager for stealing her fucking cell phone, or that's I think, or a cop doesn't pull over a black man and kill him within 15 seconds because he was black. I think that would be a colorblind America that most African Americans would get behind, for MLK, he had, like any public figure, he had a complicated relationship with the black and the white, with black and white America.
Right.
He had a complicated relationship with his wife. But when you start bringing in, these things, they start diluting from the power of the message of the man. What he stands for and represents is extraordinarily. It's the root of love power. You don't need to be violent to achieve your goals. You need to be resolute and have character and integrity, and be consistent with that. And when it came to the civil rights movement, and when it came to helping others, when it came to being an extraordinary minister and leading an extraordinary church, listen, the guy, that's what's important. And it's the same thing for, and let's just be very clear. I am not comparing Martin Luther King to the name I'm about to say, but a similar thing has happened. And the name is Ronald Reagan. Okay. And let's be clear. Ronald Reagan was a racist. He instituted racist policies. He followed up on the Nixon Southern strategy. He allowed the AIDS epidemic to rampage across the country and all these other things, right? But in the Republican Party, they're the party of Reagan. Reagan left high deficits. You know, he was not a great president. Just in what he did with the AIDS epidemic, similar to what Trump is doing now, not to the country. But he's being given this mythic characterization of who he is because of what his principles were. You know. And it doesn't mean that he's stuck to his principles all the time. It's just that that's the character, that's the brand that we've been left with, you know. And and so with Martin Luther King, and I'll finish with this, with Martin Luther King, I think it's extraordinarily important for us to actually look at how we are not following what he was preaching, you know. Actually saying, okay, you know, this is where we were, you know, and we have seen a lot of progress. This is where we're at. You know, what haven't we been doing? Listen, you know what? I was just talking to you offline with this, Stephen. You know, I'm doing this self inventory of myself. Where am I? What am I doing? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? I think that would be great for the United States.
Yeah, that self inventory part. You know, talking about, you know, we had a lot of things that we've made mythic, you know, so I'm just going to sort of sit on that for a second. We've, you know, created this sort of illusion and legend about a number of things in American history, individual history of individuals and stuff like that. And there's a great Celtics quote, you know, where, you know, when we were terrible in the 90s, people would say, you know, Larry Bird ain't walking through that door. For America, Jesus isn't walking through that door. And what happens is we try to Jesusify so many different people. And because we don't have for whatever reason, our brains can't comprehend that people are very complex individuals with good and bad. It's like either, you know, you wipe away all their terrible ills and think they're perfect, or you hate them and they're completely bad. You see it in politics, you know, with Obama and Trump, you know, very much. There's certain periods where people just, it roils them to say, what? This person is doing an incredible job. They're against all this opposition. That's great. And the thing is that, you know, thinking about Martin Luther King, he's a product of his time, to sort of bring this back to talking about dealing with that colorblind ideal. In Christianity, obviously, heaven's perfect, but the world is very much not perfect that we live in. And there's things that we have to do that are pragmatic to work through this stuff. And one of the biggest things I started to realize, I was doing some research on, I was writing that article, is that MLK, you know, he said he had this dream, but he lived a reality. He would talk about the differences of the black and white experience all the time. Mm-hmm. And his understanding was, we have to talk about those specifics of experience to make progress. But the ideal, the someday, was color blindness. The mistake that people made was thinking, oh, we have to follow his ideal now. No. That's the ideal to get to. We have to see in color in a sense that allows us to get to that colorblind society.
Right.
What are your thoughts about that?
Right. Absolutely. No, you're 100% right. You know, and it was interesting while you're talking, I saw an article, maybe it was on Huffington Post or MSNBC, op-ed type of a thing. So if you Google it, you may be able to find it. But it was basically, you know, how MLK would be regarded in the Me Too movement today, you know, because of his his sexual exploits and some of the things that he said, you know, and and again, you know, you kind of nailed it, and we were talking about this on the last podcast. So folks, if you have not if this is your first time, going to go to the last one, because that one's amazing, and the one before that's amazing, the one before that's amazing, the one before that is amazing.
100% agree. Ron is completely right. Whatever you're doing, drop it. Listen to those podcasts.
This is the podcast. But in that, I was kind of discussing about how ultimately the hateful things that somebody says, how it affects me is my choice. Now, how we construct society, how we improve society so those things aren't happening is one thing. But how I allow hatred to affect me is another, as long as it's not physical violence. You see? And so, in regards to people like Martin Luther King or any historical figure, no one's perfect. And, again, he was a man in those times, he was a Baptist minister. He was the man. I mean, he was this, he was a man of moral integrity and authority, as he is still now. Because you can't take that away from him. I'm sure Gandhi had some faults, but, you don't sit there and talk about Gandhi's faults. Same thing with the Dalai Lama. He's a human. I'm sure he has his faults. You don't sit around and talk about the Dalai Lama's faults.
Let's talk about MLK. 100% should have his own holiday. He is
absolutely. He should have more than that. He should have more than that. But go ahead. Yeah.
But what about? I want to take a second to think about maybe what he was wrong about. Were there things? Because I'm killing you here, Ron. You're like, we can't just focus on the stuff that they're wrong about or bad about. I'm swooping right in and saying this. George Washington supported the Alien Sedition Act, which effectively would have wiped out free speech by the masses, so politicians could send people to prison. They didn't like what they said. Washington did that. People say he's this mythic figure. No, he tried to push this fascist ideal, and Congress told him to F off, and he eventually rolled over and went back to the presidency. People have their crap, and they're wrong about stuff. In MLK, what do you think, ignoring his personal life for a second, I'm thinking about the stuff that he talked about. Were there anything in there that you think, what, I don't think that makes sense? Because no one's perfect.
His speechwriter, and one of his closest friends and confidants is the great Bayard Rustin, who is we share a birthday, me and Bayard Rustin, and he was gay, and it was because there's that famous picture of Bayard Rustin sitting next to Martin Luther King while Martin Luther King was in the tub taking a bath, and I guess they're working on a speech or whatever it is. With the FBI tapping their phones and things like this, and with Bayard Rustin being gay, they were going to start associating homosexuality with the civil rights movement, which would have been an extraordinary negative impact at that time, as you can imagine.
Right.
And so Bayard Rustin basically left the civil rights movement actively like he was. And, we're talking about a guy who had flew to India, talked to Gandhi, came back, taught Martin Luther King, spoke to Martin Luther King about so many of the nonviolent issues that shaped the civil rights civil rights movement, helped him write speeches. I mean, we're talking Bayard Rustin here. And again, Google it for better information. I'm not a historian, but my study, I've read a bunch about him, and I would love to actually do a movie about the dude. The guy's amazing,
right?
And and so how how Martin Luther King handled that situation, I can't say I'm exactly a major fan of, but I get it. How he didn't, and I would say the same thing for Malcolm X, how him and Malcolm X didn't figure out a way to work together, I would say was unfortunate.
Interesting. I'll give you a controversial one. He once said that the white moderate is one of the biggest inhibitors of progress, something like that. He was sort of lamenting how white moderates and this sort of hemming and hawing were, essentially preventing a lot of change from getting done. They want to get done.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting thing. I truly believe that no one's truly a moderate. People can be influenced, but I think everyone kind of leans one way or the other. In American politics, you either vote for one candidate or the other. There's no really moderate. You lean in one direction or you lean in another, and then you're pushed to vote. And I think what ended up happening is in the post-World War II era, after seeing what happened with the Nazis, seeing essentially all that extermination and violence from hyper-nationalism and fascism and stuff like that, from people who are outsiders or minorities getting wiped out by that fascist Nazi regime. I think a lot of white Americans, while moderate, were essentially living in that shadow, seeing what happened, see how society could fall to its knees. And during that time period, of all these, crazy white racists storming the streets, the police beating black people, and they saw that stuff. And, when the time came up, am I voting for Goldwater or LBJ? They had already kind of made their choice. They saw what was happening again, and they were actually really on his side, but not in overt type ways. And the other side of the coin is that you need those moderates or those soft supporters, because I know, look over in Israel and Palestine, what ended up happening is that moderate never really existed. And obviously now the Palestinians don't have really any land anymore. They've lost. And so to a certain degree, I think MLK didn't realize that a lot more white people had quietly supported him than he realized. Then, of course, obviously, Nixon came in and stuff like that, and things, slung right back. But then, since then, if you had to ask, who won psychologically, Nixon is a failed president. Goldwater is in the dustbin of history. And Martin Luther King is a deified figure on both sides of the political spectrum. Republicans and Democrats, both speak very highly of him. And so I do think that he was incorrect there. I know what he said by moderate, but I do think people were on his side more than he realized.
I would say, I get your perspective on that. I would say this. Excuse me. You can see today how complicated white America's embrace of equality towards people of color is. And today it's much more embraced. And when you're talking about he is at this, him in the civil right, in the civil rights era, in the time that he was talking about that, I tend to agree with him, actually. And the reason why I agree with him is because even today, gerrymandering, systemic issues they're institutionalized because they haven't been changed.
Right.
They haven't been changed because there hasn't been collective will. And when we were talking about a few podcasts ago, so ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning into this podcast, there's a whole series of them. And when you start going back through them, you start hearing me and Stephen talking about all types of stuff that's just simply amazing. So get your popcorn. Sometimes I like to put, and this is not a plug, but sometimes I put really nice, I can get the fresh popcorn and put really dark chocolate chips in it, like when it's really still hot, maybe sprinkle some stevia on it.
No. And then stick with the powdered stuff. Don't go any farther than that. This is obscene.
And then listen to this podcast. But when we were talking about how white America, and you see it in these people that are protesting, they're for this "Make America Great Again," this idea that everybody can be equal, especially when white people have it first. It's the white supremacy mindset. It's a mindset. It's not a hate group. Again, go back into these old podcasts, man. I'm telling you guys, white supremacy is not a hate group. It's a mindset. It's the idea that white people, in particular, white Americans, in particular, white males, are better than everybody else. And well, we know what the reality of it is. And because these systemic issues have been institutionalized for so long, there is this thing that white America clings to. That's what we're seeing today. And it's not the majority of white America, because we've seen that with the Black Lives Matter protests. But that's why when you see African Americans and gay Americans, and Latino Americans getting upset with white Americans, it's like, dude, we've been talking about this for decades. There's not a rap song you can pull from any generation that doesn't talk about all this. Latin music, poetry, movies, TV. White people have been starring in these movies. But white America's like, oh my God, this exists. And so probably that's what Martin Luther King was talking about. This tenuous relationship with, I want you to be equal.
He had this is the dyslexic approach that people have about the Black America approach, because there's this like, well, me first mentality that a lot of people have. And then what ends up happening is there's also, Martin Luther King said this, the wants and needs of the poor whites in Black America, something along those lines. I think are the one and the same of what we want.
W.E.B. Du Bois, ladies and gentlemen, go back into the podcast. I'm telling you, we have covered it. Me and Steven, if our faces aren't on the front or aren't on Mount Rushmore within 200 years, there's a major fucking problem. This entire process has been rigged. But what I'm saying
system, folks.
There's a rigged system.
We're unrigging it. We're unrigging it.
We're unrigging it. You know what I mean? But no, absolutely. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote in the 1800s that poor working class whites and poor working class blacks have the exact same socioeconomic disparity issues. The white supremacy, proud boy, Aryan Nation boy toy of mine. I mean, it was like listening. I mean, it was like a walking socioeconomic textbook right there. I mean,
people can be flipped. I know. I'm going to blow some minds of some people here. A lot of these like far, Black nationalists or white nationalist people, they're products of systems of society, and human beings are unbelievably malleable. And what will happen is you'll see this. Like if you actually see in some of these like alt-right forms like that, there's like surges of like, man, if the whites and blacks could work together, we could get these globalists or whatever the crap or whatever, to what's happened is that there's a real thing that's happening by terrible people. It's weirdly enough, terrible people are talking about a very important and useful thing to think about, is that Black and white America are stronger together than they are apart. And that many of these issues are specifically because we're being pulled apart. Martin Luther King, I'll say this, it's a controversial opinion. He's deified in some ways because those in power appreciate that he does things in a certain way that make it so society doesn't quite mess with their power and stuff like that. When he started to march against the Vietnam War, LBJ went nuts. Apparently he went nuclear and started to get a lot of media outlets, start to really drop the hammer on him. But, that's the thing. They saw Martin Luther King as a way, and what happened is MLK then got hit from the other side. A lot of younger militant Black Americans were like, this dude is just, a quiet, peaceful, get beat up in the streets type dude. And he only does what, that the media wants and stuff like that. And the problem is, and that's what we really wrestle with MLK today. Like, we're going to have MLK Day tomorrow. And I will tell you this, like, this has been happening a lot for like the past 5-6 years. Even before Trump came along, people be putting up quotes of Malcolm X and stuff like that. I'll see like Black people on my Facebook timeline and stuff like that. It is a real mentality that MLK is a great human being, but there's things about his vision that were products of the time that don't make sense for right now. And that I would say that his idea of togetherness seems to be ignored in a way. I actually think that's where he was completely right, And that's the thing that no one hears about. No one ever hears Martin Luther King talking about how, or W. Du Bois talking about poor blacks and poor whites coming together. I actually never hear that on MLK Day. And I think that's scarily by design, because I do believe that he was onto something in a real powerful way. And what's happening is as people drift away from that, they're falling more and more into the trap of division that makes everybody weaker.
Mm-hmm. No, first of all, poor white boys are fine. Let me tell you something, especially the racist ones. Love them, date them. They're, don't get me started. Okay, that's my thing. I believe in unity, baby. Trust me. You know what I'm saying? That is
terrifying.
Terrifying. It is absolutely. I apologize, folks. If you want to know what's wrong with me, tune into some of the last podcasts, and Stephen goes over a lot of that through a psychoanalytical segment called "What the Fuck is Wrong with Ron Bush."
I love the energy. It's the crazy people will become president. So the crazier you are.
I think I'll say this. Martin Luther King, I don't think that in Black America what his message was is lost on us. I think that, just to talk, I'll segue this statement into why, how we move forward in a positive way. I think, again, the tenuous relationship that America has with equality is the problem. I think that, it's, watching over the past couple of weeks, right? African Americans are going to call the cops when we need to, okay, in our neighborhoods, because that has what's been traditionally, if you look back at the 60s and the 50s, although, we had these things going on, we believe in a strong, equal, and just police system. African Americans believe in the right to bear arms. African Americans are deeply religious and faith-based people in this country. We are a very diverse electorate, but we're unified by our collective experience. And our collective experience is that what we've been seeing over the past 20 years, what we've been seeing over the past 40 years, is that there is no full embrace of Black America, And so we vote and we operate in our collective best interests. We're here. Black Wall Street was burned down, but we're still here. Martin Luther King was assassinated. We're still here. Look what happened to Rodney King. What was that, 30 years ago, 20 years ago?
I know, dude. It was like early 90s. It's happening 30 years ago.
Take any Malcolm X speech. Remove the historical references. Update it with names like Breonna Taylor or situations like Charlottesville, and tell me how that speech couldn't be given today. And the same thing for Martin Luther King. So, I mean, it's like, the reality of it is that we're not, as much progress that has been made, getting America to embrace the idea of true equality, look no further than women's rights, is the problem. Look, we just had, 10, 20,000 people storming the Capitol, talking all types of crazy bullshit. And this alternate reality, no matter what fact you feed them, they're going to come back with something more ridiculous to support their belief. Those people they weren't just hatched yesterday. That current of Trumpism has been around for a very long time. And so the positive way for us to move forward is for everyone to really start listening to the Positive Identity podcast so we can give you guys insights on how to just chill the fuck out, start listening and having conversations, stop pretending that we're that we're these that we're these incredibly just and morally perfect human beings off of Twitter, and start really getting into the fact that we're all imperfect. We say fucked up shit, and we really need to start just take a seat back and say, you know what? How do we make sure that we're a little bit better tomorrow? You know?
I'll take a step. I'll take a step forward. I'm gonna give people something tangible that they can do.
Besides listening to the Positive Identity podcast,
right?
Religiously,
and also subscribing to the social media channels, reading the articles.
How can you not?
Patreon. Right? There's a lot. There's a list. But let's talk
about that donating to Patreon real quick thing too. Also, thinking like this requires a lot of energy. So we love you.
Right. Exactly. This positive identity was created actually partially. I want to say something that's going to be very humiliating to hear. When I was running for freshman year, this is where positive identity comes from. Hear me out. Freshman year,
he was so adorable. It was so cute.
Freshman year of college, I was running for class president, and it was me and this one other dude. And I'm like going door to door of every dorm, giving people candy, telling them, please vote for me, the whole 9 yards. Bribery was already happening at age 18, so I need to work on that.
He looks like, ladies and gentlemen, he looked like straight Bambi.
It's just this young dude who didn't know much. Just like, this cute, docile, autistic kid. I was in special ed classes then too, which is even funny is I'm sure the awkwardness killed me to the bone. And so like there's a debate, and like, in the part of the debate, people asked, what was your sort of most inspiring figure? And I said Martin Luther King. My opponent said Christina Aguilera, and apparently I lost by 10 votes. So everyone this never left my head. What happened there?
You experienced racism. They're like, he said niggas.
What? No, I voted for Christina Aguilera because he said Christina Aguilera in the debate, and everyone starts laughing and cheering. And I'm like, I just realized that, people get angry at Trump for some of the stuff he does. Trump, I like to feel like he's like, I know who people are. You got to give them this. But like, it's like Obama doing it's like Michelle Obama doing the in-car comedy thing. But like, besides that.
No, but just even, real quickly though, you touched on something really important. You know what I'm saying? Trump did do that. And to tie this back into positive identity and not
a bunch of things.
Not to remind everybody of how adorable you look like a little straight Bambi on USC campus, just bouncing around.
It was Keene State College, and let me finish here.
That little white cottontail flashing around town.
I know, just like the awkwardness would chill you to the bone. The type of stuff where you'd be like, I'm trapped. I can't get out. But like going back to like MLK, like Jesus, we focus on certain verses and seem to forget the rest. And the verses of MLK that we're not focusing on specifically are white America and Black America can work together, and their experiences, the things they go through, are a lot more similar than people realize. And what needs to happen today, and why positive identity exists, is by essentially pushing out media, by sharing something, liking something, letting people know, check this out, of people of all different races, and seeing them in a positive light. What that does is it breaks those divisions that actually make us weaker and start to unify the way MLK wanted us to. Because the thing is, what he said about that great quote, he has a number of quotes where he talks about the great things that white Americans and Black Americans can do together. He wants us to see in race the best version of ourselves in race, the good of people. I dream of slaveholders, the sons of slaveholders and their slaves coming together to harmony. He believed in the good of all people and what they can do. And that's the thing, is that we have real problems but we have to see the best in each other and to come together. Hold on, soapbox talk is almost over. And that's why positive identity exists. MLK wants us to see in color because the only way because the only way to get that vision of a new colorblind world is to see the best in each other and to work together to achieve that greater world. There we go. Done.
Thank you. First of all, I am confident that Martin Luther King would approve of both Tinder and Grindr.
You killed it. Audiences are listening. They're on their feet. Fist in the air. Yes. Ron Bush comes in. Oh, Grindr and Tinder. And they sit back down. And they realize this world's a joke.
I'm sorry. I cannot.
Oh, it's great. No, we need someone to cut the tension.
Okay. First of all, I'm sure he would actually. Listen. You know what? Okay, so let's think about this real quickly, folks. Actually, as in through the jest, there emerges a rhyme to reason. All right. When you think about it, all right. Rosa Parks was how many years ago? 55 years ago, something like that. Whatever. For the sake of conversation, not whatever, but for the sake of conversation, that was Rosa Parks. Okay. Today, we have dating apps where you actually have people saying, if you are a racist, don't contact me. If you, you know what I'm saying? Or, it's a free-for-all. There is no, interracial marriage was like legalized in their 70s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And today, me and Steven can have a podcast together discussing the greatness of Martin Luther King and me being openly gay and Steven being openly white, and
white and loving it.
You're right. He's a white man.
I just picked up 5,000 followers. He may not like these 5,000 followers.
Yeah, it's like, he's my adopted white man. This is what black people, what we're trying to do is we have a symbiotic relationship. We pair you with a straight white man. You know what I'm saying? You make sure he doesn't become a serial killer. He makes sure that your technology works. It's perfect.
I'll be president someday. All right. That's the thing. You're going to have a presidential child. So or an astronaut. I'll work for you. And guess what? You as a parent will get the rewards of whatever I do. So, adopt a white child. We'll see to it that you
yeah, man, listen. I think that I think it's really important that we all just at this point. I agree. Maybe matter of fact, you know what, Stephen? I'm going to change thought. I'm going to brainstorm with you right now. If you have a quote that Martin Luther King said about white and black people working together, I say for the month, we use that as our tagline and our quote and our slogan. And, and we tie that theme into the next few podcasts that we do. And we promote that as an ideology for what positive identity is about, because I think it's high time that we start actually in this country start looking at the similarities that poor working class whites and poor working class blacks have, and figuring out how we can, bridge the great divide. As I was saying, I think in the last podcast or one of the other many great ones that you guys are going to start listening to because of the wealth of information and the humility that we have throughout this entire exercise of greatness. But, when you listen to that, and I forgot my point because I was talking a bunch of shit, which is really embarrassing.
I'll swing right in. You've opened the door for me, Ron. I'll swing right in.
Please.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Spider-Man.
So we'll put that quote in. And I actually think it's important. This pandemic, to bring it back to Ron talking before about the vaccines are coming. He was talking about before the podcast about vaccines are coming, for it to come out. There's this big talk about, giving to black-owned businesses. And what I realized that I think the sort of fear point is, I think a lot of people are in this, it's either you or me type mentality.
They should have never given you niggas any money.
I would say this, we help black-owned businesses
Absolutely.
poor white businesses, poor Hispanic businesses, poor Asian businesses. If we keep saying that and doing that, and here's the thing, black-owned businesses first. I'll deal, obviously black-owned businesses are struggling more than Hispanic or white or Asian businesses. Let's go there first. Let's make sure black Americans psychologically know that the entirety of the American system and populace are there to help. It's not just the businesses. It's that psychological understanding that if you're falling, a number of hands will come in to grab you and pick you up. And to me, I think that's the mentality we have to have in this. And then those poor white businesses are thinking, oh no, what about us? We're with you too. We don't want you to go down either. We want the hands of a diverse, multi-identity United States to grab you and lift you up as well. And then, of course, obviously Hispanic, Asian, Native, and so on and so forth. If we hammer that into people's heads, it will change people.
Yeah. I think that if me and Steven decide to run for president, okay, one of the things that we're going to talk about is, and Steven, I'm running this by you now before it makes it into the official platform statement. I think that one of the things that we're going to run on is making sure that both poor working class whites and poor working class blacks voices are heard and policies are directed specifically for these needs.
Right.
And when we bring these policies, when we bring the issues forward, then people will see the similarities. And so then when we work to pass the laws, I think it's something else we could do. You have like sister cities. So like make Philadelphia sister city to Boise, make Los Angeles sister city to, Chattanooga, So this way there's these direct business exchanges that's happening where services and goods are getting preferential treatment to help bring people together within the country.
No one else.
So there's actually
no one else is doing it. You and me are verbalizing. Go continue. I'm sorry. I'm excited. I cut you off because I'm so excited.
Yeah, listen. I understand. It's Steve. Ladies and gentlemen. I don't have anything funny to say, so I'll just keep it with my thought.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to cut right in. I'll save you. I'll save you from the fall.
Right.
Exactly. Hands are coming in to catch you before you fall. All right.
Yeah.
So we're at the 50-minute mark, and I know obviously people's attention spans are like fractions of a second these days. So I'll sort of wrap this up and bring it together. But like Ron and I, for people listening, we genuinely want to make this thing work. This is a two-parter. If you want to like go full tearing each other apart, enemy versus enemy, we're a country with 500 million guns. F off, go do your thing, and you'll just go down with this whole thing. You're not going to build a system where people can fight each other. But we can't work from a position of doing something just because it could hurt us. We have to work from a position of doing something because it's the right thing to do, and it's the good thing to do, and it's the thing we should be doing. And what we should be doing is making it. So, like, there are things that I'm proud about that we made progress for Black America, things I'm proud about that we made progress for white America, poor whites, middle class, whatever, progress for Hispanic, Asian, whatnot. And today, 2021, Joe Biden looks to become president of the United States. There's always a shift in mentality. What is the way forward for a nation? To me, the way forward for a nation is doing the right thing and have a society for everyone, one that MLK believes in.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll wrap with this. For anybody who may be stumbling across this podcast for the first time, I will say, first of all, thank you. Second of all, let me just say this. Me and Steven really, truly, honestly, as different as we are, really, truly do honestly hope that we can make people think a little bit differently about things, about race relations in America, not just Black, white, but also Native, Latino, what have you, Asian. And and really see how we as individuals, function in our society, and, take inventory of what our own personal biases are, and how we can be individually better people. And now that we see what America has to offer, and the undercurrent and the nastiness of race relations, how can we have compassion, patience, integrity, consistency, and strength, just like Martin Luther King did, to be able to get the message out to those who are able to hear it, because there are people out there who are able to hear it. I may joke about it, but I know people who used to be racist that no longer are, because they were able to hear it. And so, and I bet people like that too.
Yep.
So,
gotta believe in people.
You got to believe in people. People grow, people change, people learn, people become different, people say bad things. And so, when you go about your day, when you see these people on TV saying these things, just understand that this is who they are in that moment. That doesn't mean that's who they have to be for the rest of their lives, and probably won't be, unless they choose to be that way and not grow. And so let's try and tamp it down. It's difficult. I get it. I'm angry. I'm bitter. I watch TV sometimes and I just want to throw something at it. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? I get it. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, I live in some sanctimonious bubble where I'm like, oh, everybody needs to meditate. Fuck that. Listen, people are assholes, but at the same token, the reality of it is we all get it. So let's all try and be a little bit better today than we were yesterday. If you know some closeted white supremacists, inbox me, DM me for sure. I have. I guess that's it. That's all I can say.
Folks, happy MLK Day weekend. Let us.
He would approve of that message.
That greater society that he would want. I heart you all. This is a Positive Identity podcast, and we'll see you all soon.
You guys have an amazing day. Stay healthy, stay wise, and stay full of love. Peace, love, and hair grease.